Well, if you're part of the startup world or you track what's happening in it, then you know the young founders of Zepto, Adit Palicha and Kevalia Bora. But what you may not know is that without a 40 lakh rupee grant at the peak of the pandemic, the duo who had just stepped out of their teens may not have been able to find their footing as entrepreneurs. Inspired by this story, Zerodha's co-founder Nikhil Kamath on his podcast pitched the idea of a fund to support entrepreneurs under the age of 22 who are building home, fashion, beauty or lifestyle brands. Kamath's guests, former Myntra CEO and now the founder of Mensa Brands, Ananth Narayanan, the founder of Future Group, Kishore Biani, and the creator-entrepreneur Raj Shamani all gave a quick round of approval and was born the WTF Fund. The fund has a corpus of about 80 lakh rupees for two under 22 entrepreneurs who will be selected after reviewing applications with some tough preset filters. By the way, the last date to apply is the 16th of October. We won't be surprised if there is going to be a flood of applications from the target group of Gen Z, because as per a Nielsen study, 1 of 2 Gen Zs around the world wants to be an entrepreneur, and waiting for them are digital consumers of their own generation. 1 out of 3 online shoppers in India is a Gen Z, as per a Bain & Co. report. From legacy global retailers to online marketplace to now startups, everybody is rushing to keep up with this hungry digital generation. Hello and welcome to Young Turks, India's longest running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan. Joining me on the show, 3 of the 4 founders of the WTF Fund, Nikhil Kamath, the co-founder of Zerodha. Also on the show, Raj Shamani, the founder of the House of X, and Ananth Narayanan, the founder of Mensa Brands. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Raj, let me start by talking to you about what your investment philosophy and what your investment thesis is. And on your LinkedIn bio, you say, I'm not your usual money guy who gives you funds and then sits on top of your head 24/7. I actively invest in startups in the fintech, FMCG and fashion economy space. So what has been driving your investment philosophy, your investment style so far, Raj?
So majorly, I think there are 3 major incidents which I look for before I invest in any startup. One is, can I add any value in this? Like with the distribution or the insights that I have or the kind of learnings which I've built, can I add something? Because if I'm of no value, it doesn't make sense, because I don't think money just itself is going to help a lot of people. I think something additional to money, if I can contribute, then that's the first thing. Second, when I go for, I most of the times, because I'm young, I'm very hungry. And when I started, I remember I started with 10,000 rupees for the first time. So I look out for the same kind of thing when I look out for in other entrepreneurs as well. Are they as hungry as when I used to be when I started? So that's the other thing that I really look for. And third, and the most important thing, I really find out people who are very into the ground and action. I love people who have built certain level of insights and certain level of traction based on the things they've experienced in their life, not through just internet. So that's something really important. So these are the things which I typically look for before even I start thinking about whether do I need to invest in them or no.
You know, I don't know how much insight or experience one can have as a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old, but, you know, kudos to you for having built what you have been able to build. But let me bring Nikhil and Ananth into the conversation, and then I'll come back to you, Raj, and talk about House of X with you. Nikhil, thanks very much for joining us. You know, to start with, there's an epidemic of podcasts. I mean, literally every founder today is doing a podcast, and this is culturally very different from the time that I started Young Turks, which was 20 years ago, where founders wanted to sort of lie low, fly under the radar. Nobody was really out there actively engaging, telling their story, or in fact, trying to draw out other people's stories. Things have changed. There's been a shift. How do you explain that?
Hi, Shereen, firstly. I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there today realize the importance of having distribution. Anything that you might want to build tomorrow, having a certain amount of following and distribution, I think is very relevant. This is a very candid way of answering this question. While we are doing it for impact and, you know, trying to share a lot of what we have gotten, inculcating that distribution is a big part. Secondly, I think net, it's a really good thing, because access to a lot of the information so many of these podcasts are bringing out. Like, I'm a big consumer of so many podcasts. I probably have like 5 or 10 favorites. And I find it easier to consume and garner knowledge via these podcasts compared to, reading a book. There are often times when reading a book is more enjoyable, but this seems like something you can do while you're working out, while you're going for a walk. So there are many advantages to it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so, which is why we're seeing a whole host of founders launching their own podcasts. But let's talk about the WTF Fund, Nikhil. I mean, this is your latest sort of venture, so to speak. In a way, I imagine it's got to do with the whole idea and philosophy of paying it forward or paying it back. But outside of that, this is not your first attempt at investing. You've got a whole bunch of other ventures that are doing that. This is specifically targeted at under 22-year-olds. Explain to me, what is the rationale behind wanting to do that? Is this gimmicky, or is this for real?
It's not for real. It's not a fund even. Let me be really honest about it. Every show we shot, which is typically one night a month that I shoot a show, we were running a charity project or a charity campaign where each person who was on the show donated a certain amount of money. We aggregated it and let the audience pick which charity the money should go to. We had the Zepto guys on the show who said they got that 40 lakh rupee grant, which changed their life. So for this particular episode, which me, Kishore, Ananth and Raj shot, these 3 friends of mine courteously agreed to join me and allocate 1 crore rupees to a couple of youngsters, not just the money, but also time and mentorship for them. So let's say 1 crore goes to 2 or 3 companies which are started by Gen Z, or I don't know what the 18 to 22-year-old age bucket is called today. And that's the extent of it. On the next episode that we shot, we had a bunch of restaurant people come in, and they have donated a certain amount of money, or they have agreed to fund a certain amount of money towards somebody young who wants to start a restaurant. And they will also bring in the expertise and help them out. I think what we're trying to achieve in this is not typically a fund. This is not something to, try and make money out of, nor is it structured in a formal way like that. The idea is to pick some really young, bright people out there. Yeah. I think India is bustling with so many really young people who are more precocious than they should be and building or attempting to build incredible stuff. I think this is a way of coming together and supporting them. I wouldn't even look at this as a fund. People in this age group are typically not taken seriously in the venture capital world, and we want to give them a shot and see what they can do with it.
Yeah. I get that, and I think that we could do with a lot more of this sort of, seed capital, if you like. But Ananth, let me bring you into the conversation. So what started as a conversation with friends or among friends is now turned into an opportunity that young people under the age of 22 can hope to benefit from. But, outside of this, we're seeing a whole host of startup founders who are actively now investing in ventures that they believe in or founders that they believe in, and sizable, significant amounts of capital is going in. So that's serious stuff. I mean, this is fun and games, but that's serious stuff. In your experience now, what have you seen change when you look at putting down serious money towards a serious investment? What are you looking at, Ananth?
So, Shereen, firstly, thanks for having us on the show. Look, I mean, I think, as you rightly pointed out, this, I think, was more, just, encouraging entrepreneurship. I thought Nikhil's idea of 122 was fantastic. I think, independent of what happens, it's not an investment. I think it's an investment into the ecosystem, which I think can hopefully benefit young entrepreneurs. I think that's sort of, I think that's great. In terms of what I look for and what I do in terms of investment, I think look, firstly, by the way, if you take the last 7-8 years, there is more liquidity in the startup ecosystem. And therefore, I think people are starting to invest back. I think the advantage of having folks who have actually been in the startup ecosystem, as opposed to more traditional venture capital or private equity folks, is They can help a little bit more operationally. They have more empathy with the founder, and they're a different source of capital. So I think over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think that's sort of increased. And I think it's a good trend. I think it's an alternate source of capital for founders. And I think many folks have started to do it.
Yeah, many folks are starting to do it. But, Nikhil, let me come back to you now. And I remember a Twitter thread that you had put out a couple of months ago where you talked about how the millennials really benefited from what was an era of easy money from 2008 onwards to now a very different environment that startup founders need to get used to and come to terms with. And in many ways, you believe that millennials like yourself were beneficiaries of the kind of largesse that we saw going around. But what do you now believe is going to change in the manner in which startups are going about with their execution plans, in the manner in which startups are going about their fundraising plans? What is the message that you would like to share to those who are now actively getting out and starting up and scaling up, more importantly?
There's no way to sugarcoat this, Shereen. I feel the environment is a lot tighter now. Cost of money has gone up from maybe 1 to 2.5% to as high as 6-7%. And the risk-taking ability of this foreign capital, which was coming into India, is not going to be like it was a few years ago. I think there is still opportunity out there. There is still money chasing really good entrepreneurs. But you have to distinguish yourself. I think the days of showing how you will be profitable 5-10 years from now and acquiring more and more market share, I think that has become less cool as a narrative today than it was a few years ago. So there are opportunities out there. I don't think anybody new should be disheartened per se, but I would say things are more realistic now than they were in the last few years.
What we're also now starting to hear, and in fact there was a whole host of tweets that I saw just this morning saying, look, the pendulum is swinging completely in the other direction, where now innovation and creativity is being stifled because there is this laser-sharp focus on profitability. And how do you innovate, if you're going to put the focus and the emphasis on profitability from day one? How do you respond to that?
I don't know if innovation and being profitable are two sides of a coin. I don't think one happens at the cost of another. I feel like very often somebody can be profitable and innovate at the same time. I think the crux of this issue, Shereen, is as a country, we spend too little money on research. For a country with a certain fraction of the American GDP, us spending 1/3 of the GDP of what US spends on innovation and research per se, it would be hard pressed for someone to say we will see the kind of innovation happen in India that could happen in countries where the budget for research is so much more.
Yeah.
I think the private sector and the public sector somehow needs to come together for this. The one thing India has going for it really is the narrative for India in what is our otherwise very bleak world is fairly sanguine today. There is a lot of appetite for anything with the India story attached to it, be it by virtue of our demographics or the narrative of the incumbent government being as stable in their policy making, and the fact that they've been around for so long has made us very attractive. So I think there are opportunities out there to innovate. And like we were discussing this fund earlier, I feel like this is the era when foreign money slows down, that more Indians have to come in and invest and own Indian IP and inculcate Indian IP, because beyond a certain point, it's one thing to say there is no innovation happening, but I feel like we got to come out and back these young people who might be building something innovative, taking long moonshots, even if they were not, sensible from a capitalistic lens.
Yeah.
And when enough of us do it, I think things will start changing here as well.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, Nikhil. I think that the emphasis on R&D, the spends on R&D as a percentage of GDP, as a percentage of sales across different companies have to go up significantly if we really want to be IP and innovation driven and create brands that are relevant globally. But Ananth, on that issue, and I remember you said that, look, the marketplace has provided the opportunity for entrepreneurs to put put out a whole host of products at different price points in the market. Putting out a product because the barriers of entry are so low is one thing. Creating a brand is an entirely different thing. You can subsidize and discount product launches. It's very hard to subsidize and discount brands that people aspire to want to own. In a market which is starting to get commoditized in some spaces, with the environment changing, what do you believe will need to change from a founder's perspective?
I think great question, Shereen. Firstly, I think brand building takes a long period of time. It happens over 5 years, 10 years. I don't think brands get built instantly. So you need to build trust. You need to build repeats. You need to have great products. And I don't think that's an easy journey. I think the macro point, though, is India, in at least the lifestyle spaces, is mostly an unbranded market. So unlike, say, the US, where it's mostly branded, in India, it's mostly unbranded. If you take fashion, beauty, and home, 80% of the market, I would say, would be unbranded. So the opportunity, I think, to build brands is slightly different in India than anywhere else in the world, because you're actually moving from unbranded to branded. And therefore, at some level, you are playing on momentum as opposed to taking away market share from somebody. I think that's one point I wanted to make. The second is, I think brands are all about eventually having meaning to a customer and creating pull. Like you rightly pointed out, I think either discount or performance marketing driven brand building can take you to a certain scale, say 20, 30, 40 crores. But to get to a brand north of 100 crores, from 100 to 1,000, you need to really create pull. And that pull, by the way, is built over time. And it's built because the brands have great quality, consumers love those brands, and you actually get great repeat rates, right? And I think it's very quantifiable and measurable, right? I mean, that's what really a brand means, which is consumers come and search for you as opposed to searching for a category. And I think that's the hard part about building a brand. And I think that's why there are so few brands in India that are at scale. But it also, I think, Shereen, presents a real opportunity. I think the important thing to realize is you can't do it in a hurry. You have to take time. And I think you can build it in a long-term sustainable manner, because here, the runway to compound and grow is for the next 20 years, right? Not for the next 5, because there's no upper cap on the available market or the size of the brand that you can actually build, because India is just quite large and quite unbranded as you start today.